I literally said out loud something to the effect of, I give up. If I'm supposed to rot here, then I'm just going to rot here.
Let me rot.
Yeah, let me rot. But you know, if you want me, come and get me. The beginning of making the positive changes in your life begins with a shift in your perception. When you're willing to have your perceptions changed, then you literally can open up a whole new world for you, or at least you can open up a new path or a direction for you to go in.
Welcome to the Manceptional podcast. This is your host, Ken Arcega. Today I spoke with Raymond Salas. He's an energy healer here in Los Angeles. And I didn't know exactly what to expect. You know, you see all kinds of things on the internet about healing and crystals and that like, but I found Raymond to be very practical, as he says, and he ran across this ability somewhat by accident. It was an interesting discussion to see how he went from his former corporate life into a big event in his life where everything was pretty much destroyed with a wrecking ball, as he says, and how he followed his interest and passion and ended up being an energy healer. So let's jump right into today's conversation. So Raymond, welcome to the Manceptional podcast.
Thank you, Ken, for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I've got a lot of questions about what you do and how you got here, so I'm looking forward to it. One thing I have to ask you, I was kind of looking around doing some research, and my first thought was, you know, when you walk around in public, let's say you're walking down the street, do you see, colors and energy around people? Like, I know I see that in the movies, and that was my first thought, and I actually did some reading where some people actually do see that. Is that the type of thing that you do, or?
No, I don't actually see colors, or I don't see energy like that. It's more like it's actually tuning into a frequency. So as I am around people, it's almost like I tune into whatever their frequency is. And and I'm not even doing it consciously necessarily, but I just start to tune into them. And as I do that, I start to get information about them. And not like personal, like what do
you mean? What does that mean? Like, is this a secret thing where you could use to meet girls, or what?
Right, I know. No, actually, what I mean is, like, I could tell if they're in a fearful place. I can tell if they're upset about something, even if they're not showing anything. I could tell if they're sad about something. It's mostly I can pick up emotions and feelings, like what's going on beneath the surface.
You can feel it. You feel it.
Feel it. I can totally feel it. And the way it's played out, like when I've had coworkers over the years, is as I work closely together with people, they would say, like, stop doing that. I said, stop doing what? They'd say, stop reading my thoughts. Stop knowing what I'm thinking and feeling. And I wasn't even aware that I was tuning into them automatically.
Wow. So this is before you got into any of this. You were exhibiting this already and you didn't even know it.
No, actually, it came more on my radar once I was actually doing this, because then people knew. But it was like I was working with people or being around people that were non-clients, that were just like either coworkers or family members or even friends on long car rides or whatever. And I would just unknowingly start to pick up on things. And I wasn't even trying to focus on what is this person thinking right now, but I would just try to get the gist, and you just kind of tune into people. Because
how could they tell? Was it because you were asking them questions, or do they feel like you were like vibing in on them or whatever?
Oh, I think sometimes I would make comments about something that was in line with what they were feeling or thinking, and unknowingly. It was never consciously trying to tune into what they were thinking or feeling. It just would start to happen automatically. And I think what would happen is, because I've been doing this work for a while now, that became more of a practiced skill, if you will, and it would just happen almost automatically now.
So would another word for this be empathy? Like you can get in on the vibe and you have empathy, and then you can kind of feel it, or is that something completely different than what you're doing?
Well, empathy can go with it, but I see it as more intuition. It's like I think we're all intuitive on some level, but this feels like intuition on overdrive. I just know things, especially if somebody asks me something. It's almost like I know automatically, boom, it's this. It's because I'm not emotionally involved. I'm not in their head. I'm not in their being. I can see clearly, oh, no, the best thing to do is X, Y, or Z, you know? And I don't mean it like I make predictions for people. I don't do anything like that. But I feel like I just get a read on people, what they're feeling, what they're about, and what might be the best direction for them to go in.
So you said, though, that your emotions are not involved. So it's not one of those things where you're sucking in, you're in the zone and you're sucking in their feelings. So if they're depressed, you get all depressed. It's not like that.
Well, no, it's not like that. But I will say early on when I first discovered this gift, I was working for a nonprofit at the time that was serving men, women, and children that were sick with life-challenging conditions. And back then, the most dominant life-challenging condition was AIDS. So you were around people, we were serving people that were really, really sick. We were delivering meals. It was a meal delivery service. And the organization that I worked for was sending meals to these people. And I just made this energy healing work available. I didn't even know what this was, but I thought if it could help people, great. And I was meeting these people that were in these really dire conditions. And I wanted to help them so much because I would see the pain that they were in, the suffering that they were in. It would actually drag my energy down. So I was really just getting disoriented, and I was really confused. And I was feeling heavy all the time. And I realized, okay, I need to shift out of this. And the way that I shifted out of that was I really began focusing on a daily meditation practice, and also just having the mindset that I am here to serve them. So just making that little shift, and maybe it's not a little shift, maybe it's a big shift, but just the shift to what can I give them? How can I help them? And just be a little bit more detached about it. I started to restore my balance, and that never really happened again.
That's funny because I have a friend who's a professional masseuse, and he told me when he first started, after he would massage people, he figured out he was kind of sucking their energy in, and he would feel horrible. Like if someone's a really kind of sour person or going through something really hard, he would feel that afterwards and just be a mess after that. And he got I don't know, someone gave him a tip about how once you get out, how you just shrug it off. I don't know if you wash it off or a mental thing. And he got out of that. So not exactly what you're talking about, but there's definitely that possibility, I think, of sucking it in. You have to have some form of separation of some sort. I think it's the same kind of concept you're talking about, I think.
Absolutely. Yes, it is important. And I did learn over the years a little ritual that I do in the morning, every morning and every evening to kind of clear myself. And basically what I do, it's just a visualization where I can picture the energy kind of clearing out from my head, out through my feet, and just clearing out, and then being replaced with another higher vibration. It's almost like giving myself a clean slate. And I don't even know where that came from. It just came to me one day to do that. And I noticed that ever since I did that, I felt so much better, like all the time. So it sounds like your friend had to figure out his own way of kind of clearing himself, because inadvertently, even just in normal daily interactions with people, we're picking up their energies, and we can be around energies. Like if they're in a bad mood or something, it can feel like we're around an energy vampire. It just pulls down our energy, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit like that. That's a little bit on what happens on a normal day-to-day basis. But when you do this kind of work where you're specifically tuning into people, it can be even more dramatic if you're not balanced, if there's not some level of detachment.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I always tell people about energy suckers. Like, I try to stay away from energy suckers. People that, either they're always asking you for stuff or they're needy, physical. You can kind of tell they're energy suckers because they want all your time. That's the obvious one. But there's also people that are just always kind of seem down and like, I just can't afford to have that right now. I'm trying to execute here. And you can feel the energy sucking out, and I don't understand the energy healing so much. That's why I want to really talk today and learn some more from you. But I feel that intuitively when people are you could just call them a downer, and they're just being around them. You feel drained, and I just can't have that around me. I try to stay away from people like that.
Yeah, yeah. I think
maybe I should try to help them, but I just can't. I don't know how to help them, but I don't want to go down the drain either.
I know, absolutely. I think we're all energetic beings, and we're all sensitive to some degree. And I think as you become more aware, it sounds like you've been paying attention to those feelings, and when you're around those people, it brings you down. So you've learned, like, hey, I don't want to be around those people. So on some level, you already made the correction within yourself to shift out of that, because and then other people, it's actually energizing to be around them, right? Their energy is just, and it's not even that they're necessarily trying to be more positive, but you just feel good when you're around them. If it lifts your spirits, it lifts your energy. And it's because we're all energetic beings and we're all tuned in, whether or not we realize it.
Yeah. Now, when you were doing this for the nonprofit and helping people who are sick, you weren't doing it for a living yet. Were you also, there's a point where you were a DJ and working for a music company and all that. Was this before that point, or how, give us a little idea of what you were doing before, how you kind of recognized you had something, and then what happened for you to actually get into this as your life work?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Well, I was living what I thought was my ideal life. I was a vice president for a music company, and I was DJing on the side, had a very attractive girlfriend, lived in a very nice house, all the things that a guy would want, right?
Right.
And I thought like I was living the life. And then one day I was invited to go hear a speaker by the name of Marianne Williamson speak, and I had never heard of her. And it was up in Hollywood. So I went with my friends and my girlfriend at the time, and I went to hear her speak. And something that she said, Ken, really kind of struck me and stood with me. She said, no matter how happy you are in your life, you could be happier. And then I was intrigued. I was like, wow. I looked around, I go, I'm pretty happy. Like, I could be happier than this. And then so as she talked more, she explained that if you are able to make the decision to allow your life to be used for a greater purpose than your own, to basically kind of make a shift to a life of service, you can discover depths of happiness that you never knew existed. And I was intrigued by that. I was like, I could be happier than this. So I must admit, initially it was probably for selfish reasons, going like, well, I could be happier than this. Sign me up. Right. And so I started making that decision. Like, if there is a better way that I can be living my life that's of greater good, for the greater good, I choose that. So I just started.
I want to stop you right there, because I've heard this a lot. I've read this a lot about serving more people, helping more people in the context of entrepreneurs and all that type of thing. And so I'm at that juncture where I'm thinking, so what can I do to help more people, whatever? And is it my podcast? Is it help? I'm not sure 100%. So when you heard this, did you have any idea of what that could be?
I had no idea. No idea. All I knew was I was making the decision. And I didn't even know what was going to happen. I actually didn't realize what I was setting in motion when I did that, because what happened initially, within 6 months or so of me deciding this and starting to just focus on this, like I said, I didn't have any clear path or what I was going to do next. But all these series of events happened that I did not connect with my decision.
No, you just mentally said, okay, like, what exactly did you say to yourself? I'm going to serve people, and that was it.
Well, what I was saying is that I was basically saying to my higher self, the God within me, if you will, I was just saying, like, look, if my life can be used for a greater purpose than my own, I choose that. I choose that.
Okay.
Use me kind of thing,
Okay.
And so I don't know if I was saying it to anyone in particular, but it was just more like to the universe, to life, to God, whatever. If there is a better way to use my life, then go. I'm on board. I choose that.
Okay.
And it seemed like a simple decision, but meaning like, if you could use the metaphor as my life is this wonderful house, I thought like, okay, it would be painted this nice color now. It made, it would be made more beautiful or something. But instead a wrecking ball came in and leveled the place. And metaphorically, what ended up happening is I ended up getting laid off from my job as VP. I ended up breaking up with my girlfriend. So then I had to move out of my house because I didn't have any money, and I had to move in with family And I was literally scratching my head, wondering what the hell happened.
What just happened? My God.
Yeah. It was. I was devastated. And then it felt like, then I tried to use my network to try to get myself out of that. So at first I would get these leads like from different friends, and it felt like every time I took a step in that direction, it would literally evaporate. I felt like this kept happening. It was the feeling of like being in quicksand, and no matter what you did, the more you struggled, the deper you sank.
Deeper you go. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
I know that feeling. Yeah.
So, and literally, I was seeking guidance. I was trying to understand what was happening, what to do next. I literally was hitting rock bottom. And it wasn't until I got to the place of giving up, meaning like total surrender. I literally said out loud something to the effect of, I give up. If I'm supposed to rot here, then I'm just going to rot here.
Let me rot.
Yeah, let me rot. But if you want me, come and get me. But I give up. I'm not going to do anything. Because at that point, I had tried everything, and I was even volunteering my time just to get out of my own head for a while and just to. So anyways, I made that little proclamation like, I give up. If you want me, come and get me. And the very next week, I got this phone call from the nonprofit where I'd been volunteering. And they said, hey, we have this position opening up, managing our database, and we think that you would be great for it. And I'm thinking to myself, really? I'm not necessarily.
This is not what you were expecting, right?
No, not at all. I'm just like thinking, well, I mean, I know how to work computers, but I'm not necessarily a computer person, and I didn't know what managing their database meant. But anyways, I met with them and they hired me. And then I started working there and, commuting up to Hollywood because I was living in Orange County at the time. And I was just I still didn't understand what was happening with my life. And I didn't think that this was necessarily an answer or response to anything that I had been deciding or asking for. I was just going with what was in front of me, because I was, at that point, I'd been out not working for 6 months, and I was just.
You might not have taken this if you had gotten this offer like just after all this happened, because you're thinking, I was a VP. I need something better than that or something, right?
Exactly. 100%. Your ego would have gotten in the way. And at that point, you're like, I don't even know what this is. I'll just do this because at least it will get me out of the house. Right.
Yeah.
And so I did that. And it was such a loving, warm space to work in, because it's a nonprofit serving people that were sick. So they literally would pray over the meals, and there was just all these, it was a high profile nonprofit, so it would attract all these celebrities and all this financial support and loving support and donations. And it was just such a warm, loving space to be in, that it really kind of made me forget about some of my challenges and troubles. And then probably about 6 months into the job, these Vietnamese healers came into our offices. There, actually, it was a kitchen where we used to work out of, and we had these workspaces outside of the kitchen. And they came and people would come over all the time to volunteer, so it was no big deal to have people come in and of all different types. Mm-hmm. And we had these Vietnamese healers come in, and they were talking about some ancient healing system. And they said, we would like to talk about what we do to, I don't know how they came up with this number, but 4 more Americans if they're interested. They told us.
That's kind of an odd thing. We want to talk to 4 more Americans.
Yeah, I thought it was weird, But anyways, they were willing to show it to 4 people. Maybe it was a space thing. I don't know. So the person that I was working for, I said, hey, are you interested in meeting with these healers? And I'm going to go, and a couple other people are going to go. I said, okay, sure. So, and then they talked about like the way the body consists of energy centers, what they called chakras in the body. And you may have heard that term before. Basically, we all have these energy centers, and they all, when they're out of balance, it can wreak havoc in our life. We can get sick. Our life can stop flowing, all these other things. So I was like, sounds kind of interesting. Still didn't understand what it meant, but they showed the way that they worked. They would sit these people down in these chairs, and they would actually place their hands lightly on their forehead and on their arm. And then I don't know what they were feeling, but they would have it for a set amount of time. And I was intrigued by that. So I started playing around with this on my own, afterwards. And I just met with him I just met with him for a few times. And then I started practicing on my own. And then I felt like it would be better to lay people down. And that's what I was feeling. And then right around that time, I saw this other healer working, and that's exactly what they were doing. They were laying people down. So I said, that's what I want to do. So I want to start laying people down and just see what I pick up. And honestly, I had no idea what I was doing.
And you're just curious at this point.
I'm just curious. I'm just kind of making it up as I go along, right? I'll put my hand here. What do I feel? But I got to tell you, Ken, I just kind of put it out there like, hey, I don't know if this can help people. And I was working for an organization that was helping sick people. But, I make myself available. And I wasn't even saying it to anyone in particular, but I was just kind of making that decision. And then we got this phone call from one of our clients saying that, do we know anybody that does energy work that would come to my house? Because I think that would help me. And they said, I think Raymond does something. He's been working on something, So I was like, Raymond, do you want to go see this person? Because they were homebound, right? So I said, okay, I'll go. And
but do you have, at this juncture, do you have any, how do you know what to do?
Well, what I would do is I did remember where the chakras were located in the body. And I did remember that it felt like if you put your hand over one, you can kind of feel energy coming out, and then you could also feel energy going in. Okay. And so I would just try to feel that until it felt like it balanced to me. And it was just more of an intuitive knowing. It wasn't anything, like I said, I was literally just making it up as I went along. But when I went to meet with this first person, and she's in bed, she's actually bedbound, so she couldn't even get out of bed. I think she had breast cancer. And I just, I said, okay, just relax and close your eyes. And then I put my hands on her. And the moment I put my hands on her, it's like I knew I could feel her fear immediately. I could feel how she had some trust issues. I could feel like there was some dynamic with her husband that where they weren't on the same page. I don't know how I could feel it. So I didn't know what to do with that information. So I just repeated it back. I said, I'm feeling a lot of fear in you. I'm feeling a lot of this. And I see that, you have some trust issues in particular with your husband, and it's causing this rift between you. And she looked at me like, what? And wow. She didn't know. I think she was kind of in shock, and I was a little bit in shock. And
I was going to say, did you kind of freak out a little bit? Like, wow.
I did, I did freak out a little bit. And then after I left, I'm like, I don't know what that was, and then I realized, well, I don't think I'm supposed to just openly share what I find necessarily, because people may not be ready to hear it in the way that I'm feeling it. I can share with them what I find, but don't just blurt it out like I did,
Right.
And because I could see that it really took her aback, and she was shocked, like, how do you know all this kind of stuff, And then there was a couple of other experiences that happened during that time where, once again, people started referring people to me. I got invited, to these, this musician in the Hollywood Hills, and then he heard about my work, and then I started working with him. And then it was a word of mouth thing. And literally, the more I did it, the more I had more of an idea of what I was doing, or what felt like a natural rhythm to me. And literally, I just kind of created my own way of working. And then there were some experiences early on where people were really sick, and they said that whatever I did, it cleared. And I was like, wow, I don't know what to make of that, And not that I claim any credit for any of that, or nor make any promises about that type of stuff. But I just try to, hey, if I can help in any way, that's what I want to do. And it seemed to be helping. And then they were telling other people, and then it just kind of snowballed. Pretty soon I was getting interviewed on TV, cable wow. TV, and I was getting invited to facilitate different groups, like meditation groups. I was getting asked to be a spiritual counselor at a drug rehab place. And this was all organically. And it all started just when I started going out and working with people.
Wow. So it sounds like there are a lot of different aspects that this crosses over. So I'm thinking like psychology. How do you deal with someone? They're not ready to hear information, or you need to figure out how they could best take the information. Then what do they do with that information? It seems like you could be getting into an area of psychiatry, where instead of giving medication where they'd ordinarily be giving medication, you're kind of going at it another way. I mean, this umbrella it's a large umbrella when you start getting to this area. Did you, where do you fit in this whole thing, and how did you figure that out?
Well, I think for me, as I kept doing it over time, I just kept seeing myself more as like a coach, not like, and life coach is a very popular term these days.
Yeah,
and this was like in the early 90s. So I wasn't necessarily seeing myself as a coach. I didn't even know what that was. But as it developed over time, I would realize that I was becoming aware of things about people. I was reading certain things in them, and I could take that information and develop tools that they can use. So organically, I started coming up with things that they could do, tools that they could do that are simple, that are easy to do, that would help shift things in their awareness and in the way they're focusing on things. And by doing that, their energy flow would change, and they would start having different life experiences, and it started working. And then as I started getting feedback like, hey, that tool that you gave me really worked, I started to literally, it's not just a metaphor, but I literally started developing my own toolbox, of all these different tools that I was just developing on the spot just by working with people. And a lot of the things, they just came to me as I was working with people. I wasn't like thinking of them. I wasn't necessarily reading about them in books, even though I was, I enjoyed reading and all of that. And I would say in those early couple of years, I was spending a lot of time and energy trying to figure out, what is this?
Right.
What is happening to me? And it was really hard for me to wrap my head around, even though I'm able to speak about it very matter-of-factly with you right now. It's only because I've been doing it for a long time,
Right.
To this day, I still don't know exactly what it is, but I do know what it can do. And I have seen the way it has helped others. And I feel fortunate to be able to share this with people.
So did you have a mentor at the time or now, or you're kind of your own research and intuition? You didn't have a guru telling you?
No. Even though I did, meet people that did this type of work, or I did meet gurus early on when I was working at that nonprofit, because they would come sometimes into the kitchen, not to see me, but just to volunteer, et cetera. And or people got referred to me, that were gurus or all of that. But I never followed any one of those. I just remember reading this quote that from a guru. Actually, basically it said like, light the lamp within you, and then be your own guru, march on without fear. And I just remembered that was good advice for me early on. And I don't even know how I came across that quote, but I remember that's kind of the approach I've taken ever since. I've just kind of developed my own path.
Now, have you ever run into someone? It sounds like everything seemed to work. You would feel things and it would work. Have you ever run into somebody that you don't feel anything at all?
That doesn't happen very often. A lot of times, if I can feel how people aren't very open to things, or they're stuck in some way, but they're not willing to change or shift. What I found with this work is it works best. You don't have to understand what it is, but if you have the openness and the willingness to experience it, to open yourself up to it, that's enough of an opening for the work to kind of get in there and do whatever it's going to do. Sometimes you get people who experience that opening, but they're not comfortable opening themselves up even a little bit. So then they close themselves back up. And then it kind of feels like the work stagnates and it doesn't do anything. And so
the person has to be open to this.
Exactly. They have to at least be open to it. You don't have to be like I always tell people, I said, look, my background is in business, running businesses, running companies. I said, I'm a very pragmatic person. I said, I just happen to do energy healing work. I'm not a new agey type of person, so I look at things very pragmatically, and I want you to do the same. I don't believe that my work is for everyone. but I feel like if there is something in it for you, you'll be called to it. You'll feel motivated to check me out. You'll want to connect with me. You'll want to experience it, or someone will refer you to it who they think who they think you are a good match with me.
So I'm curious about the type of people that want to come see you. I could understand if somebody's sick and all that, but let's say somebody is just maybe in a position that you were just in before when this all started, where you're trying to find your way. Let's say you lost your job or you're not happy. You've got a great title, money, and a great girlfriend, but something doesn't feel right. Do you get those type of people also, or is it all just kind of obvious where you're feeling sick, you've got a physical ailment?
I feel like in the early days, I was working with people that were really sick because I was working for a nonprofit that was dealing with people that were sick. And these days, I would say most of my clients aren't those type of people. Most of those clients are people like you described, who are just at a crossroads in their life. Maybe they're having challenges with work, with relationships, with money, or just on a spiritual level. Maybe they've experienced all the success and there's still this emptiness inside of them where they're wondering, what is this all about? And I don't know where to go from here. And I don't want to hear, I don't want to read another book, and I don't want someone else to tell me, what to do. So they'll connect with someone like me, because I don't tell people what to do, but I will share what I see and what I find. And I will point out, what this seems like, what is calling you. This seems like the path that is best for you, or this seems like what the next step is for you. Maybe you should consider that. So I feel like these days, I would say 90+% of the people that I work with are just normal, everyday people just trying to live the best life that they can. Every now and then I'll get somebody who's physically sick. In fact, that just happened recently, and it reminded me of the work that I used to do in the early days, where all my clients were like that because they were in great need.
Now, what happens if, or do you ever get into a position where you need someone to do this to you, or can you always clear yourself out every day and heal yourself, so to speak? Or do you ever have times where you question what you're doing, where you're going, or something's feeling off? Are you someone else's client sometimes?
Not really so much these days. I mean, I have had definitely times where I needed a balance, so I would seek out other people. Because doing this type of work, you meet a lot of different people that do different types of things. And so, but I feel like I do a pretty good job of keeping myself clear. So I don't ever feel like I'm backed up. I will say a big thing that helps with that is just kind of like my daily routine. It's really important for me to do meditate every day. And also I do conscious breath work. And I just use an app. There's an app that was developed by the tech entrepreneur, Kevin Rose, who years ago started that site, social sharing site, Dig. And, but anyways, I guess he got into meditation, and he wanted to make an app that was free and available to people. And I started using it, and I love it, and basically it's just
what's the app called?
Oak, OAK.
And because I wanted to actually ask you about some of the things that you just mentioned to see if it's some things that the listeners could look into. So the meditation, which I tried, I use an app called Heart Math, and it connects to my ear, but I don't know if I'm getting anything out of it or not, honestly. When you say breath work, I don't know exactly what that means.
Well, on the app,
maybe you could explain some of this stuff. That'd be great.
Sure. On the Oak app, first of all, there's guided meditations, and you can set the duration. You can set the type of voice, male or female. You could set the type of background music that you want, or no background music, or background sounds. And once you basically set it up the way you want to, you adjust the volume, and then you sit back and you relax and you go through your meditation. Also on the app, there is breathing. And there's 3 different types of breathing techniques that they have. One is a pranayama breathing, which is more of a relaxing, clear the stress kind of breathing technique, which I totally believe in and believed in before I was using this app and have shared with a lot of my clients. And the other two types of breathing techniques they teach are one's called awake, where you do it, and the breath work only takes about like a minute or two to do. All you have to do is follow along with what the app is telling you to do. It'll tell you to breathe out, breathe in. It tells you when. All you have to do is follow along with the app when it's telling you, and you breathe out through your nose, breathe in through your mouth, or whatever it's telling you. And so the awake, the idea of after you do it is you feel more awake, and then the other one is, I guess, a breath work that teaches you how to focus more. And it's one that's used by the Navy SEALs. And it's a simple one as well too. And it only takes like 2 minutes. So I really like the app, and I refer a lot of clients to it because it's free. And he wants to make it free to people because he realizes that some people may not be able to afford to take a high-end meditation class, like a TM or something like that. So here's this app that's available to anyone that if they're interested in this can do that.
That's awesome. I'm going to give it a try. So that's one hot tip for the listeners. Give this a shot. To put it in some context, because I follow MMA like UFC. So the Gracie family, Rickson Gracie, is one of the forefathers of the whole Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He does these type of breathing exercises. I don't know what it's called, where he really sucks his stomach in. It's weird looking. It sucks all the way in like 6 inches. But anyway, that's part of his routine for his martial arts. Then you mentioned the Navy SEALs. I know there's a guy named Mark Devine that has SEAL Fit or whatever. He does yoga and breathing. So for anybody that might think this is too, SoCal to LA or what have you, there are some real warriors that do this and get a mental state in mind. So, I'm sure there's people who are skeptical, but it's worth trying. It's worth looking into.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like these days, whatever works. That's my philosophy. People have asked me, do I take more of an Eastern approach? Do I take more of a Western approach? I say, no, my approach is whatever works. Like I said, I just try to be pragmatic. So if this can help me be better and function better, then I'm all on board. One thing when I read the Tim Ferriss book, The Tools of Titans, which was,
I have that.
That's a great book, right? Where he interviews all these leaders and executives and successful people. But one common denominator that they all have is they all have some type of morning routine that, and in most cases, it involves meditation and some type of breathing and some type of balance and clearing work for themselves, because they found that makes them more effective at what they choose to do and more successful.
Yeah, and that is a common theme. That one, and kind of going back to serving others or charity, seems to be one that all the top guys talk about for whatever reason. And you're not doing it for like you're purposely thinking karma. Okay, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to make money. Like you're not purposely trying to think of that. It's just when you help a lot of people, it just somehow comes back to you. But these are billionaires that are saying this, so you can't. You can ignore it if you want, but there's got to be something there. And I haven't connected that to myself yet, but they're all saying it.
No, it's true. It reminds me of the story about this man that I read about years ago named Lester Levinson. And he is a man who developed a technique called the Sedona method. And it's basically kind of a releasing emotions that are backed up into us by consciously releasing them. And his story was he was like this successful physicist, and he had money and he had a successful life, but he found that he was still depressed. He still felt this emptiness within himself, and he got sick, and he was literally sent home to die. And so while he was sent home to die, he started consciously thinking about all these different areas of his life. And he started wondering about, all these years I had so much love in my life. Why was I still feeling depressed? Why did I not feel fulfilled? And he realized you can have all the love around you, people giving love to you all the time, and you can still feel empty inside. He said the key is giving love. He always felt the most alive when he was giving love. when he was focusing on giving himself to others. He realized that that made him feel better. That is when he felt the happiest in his life. And I think that speaks to what you just brought up, which is, when you get to the point where all your needs are satisfied, like in the cases of a billionaires, where they have all this money, they have all their basic necessities met, and yet there's something else that's calling them. And they realize where the true satisfaction lies is in focusing on giving to others. But when you don't have money, the thought is like, well, money is the answer. But once you do have it, you realize, oh, wait, there's something more.
So what would you say is the main, I think we kind of went over this, for men who are listening, they're not necessarily on the right track and they want to get on the right track, but they don't know how to do it. For you, you said it was just, you finally just gave up and just said, use me. Do you have, or maybe that's the only way to do it? I don't know. Do you have any advice now that you've been past that and gotten over the hump? Any thoughts on that you could give to our listeners?
Oh, absolutely. One of the last jobs that I had was I was as a VP for an internet-based company. I was hired as VP of operations initially. And the first day on the job, I felt like I had made a mistake. Like, this was not for me. Like, what am I doing here? Yes, beautiful offices, great view. I had artwork on the walls, nice furniture. I had 2 big monitors facing me. I'm in this very nice office by myself, staring at these 2 monitors. The kitchens are fully stocked. There's all these very nice people around me working. And I just felt like I had made a mistake accepting this position. And yet on the surface, it seemed like great, good pay, nice title, nice people, great environment. What's the problem here? But I was miserable because I really realized then, and it was a good lesson for me, that you can have all the things on the outside, but if you're not satisfied and you don't feel good on the inside, then it really doesn't matter. So it's really, you have to go for the things that light you up, that feel good to you, even if it's not logical. And so it was not logical for me to leave a job like that. So what I did is, I remember about a month or 2 into the job, I went away for a couple of days. And I remember I started, just when I had some quiet time to myself, I realized, what is it that is really bothering me about this job? Why is it so bad? What is it about it? And what it came for me, what it was, is I felt like I wasn't being fully seen and appreciated for who I am and what I bring to the table. They were trying to make me fit in this certain path and do these certain tasks, which don't necessarily play to my strengths, but they need it done.
I hate that. I know that feeling.
Yes, exactly. And the irony for me is, when I had met with the CEO, he knew who I was. He knew what my background was. So I thought he knew what he was getting when he hired me. And instead, when I got there, I realized there was this whole other set of tasks that needed to be done, and they just needed someone to do it, someone they could trust to do it. So I was the man tapped for the job. And I realized, if I continue down this path, I'm never going to tap into the things that light me up, the things that feel good to me. I can just kind of like babysit these tasks for them for a while, but it's never going to be satisfying to me. So that was the realization that I had, is what was really bothering me is I wasn't being seen and appreciated for who I am and what I bring to the table. So I realized that I want that. And then the second thing I did is I said, okay, if somehow, some way, I could get on the other side of all these feelings, and what do I imagine that would feel like? If somehow, some way, I could get past all of this and I was in a great space again, what do I imagine that would feel like? So I identified those qualities. I would feel free. I would feel creative. I would feel, passionate. And I wrote down those qualities. And there was like 3 to 5 qualities that I wrote down. And then what I started doing, Ken, is I started every day, I would look at those qualities. I would read the, creative, passionate, fun, And as I review those qualities, I would close my eyes and imagine like, okay, if I was feeling all of those qualities right now in my work, what do I imagine that would feel like? And I would just practice feeling that for like 2-3 minutes at a time, just because I was trying to bring to my awareness what it would feel like if I had the synergy of all of those feelings. Because I feel like if ultimately where I want to get to is those feelings, I can practice feeling them. Even though there was nothing on the surface or in my day-to-day work experience that was mirroring those feelings. Right. So a funny thing started happening is as I started to practice those on a daily basis, is I really started feeling better at work. And even though I was only doing it for a couple minutes, a day at a time, sometimes I do it a couple times a day, but I would do it at least once a day. And I just started feeling better. And then it's interesting, the dynamic at work started shifting a little bit. Even though I was still doing the same tasks, it didn't feel so bad doing them anymore.
Now, these things that, and funny, I want to talk about an intersection. I had what you just talked about intersects with something that I just discussed on another podcast. It just came by accident because they were asking me about my daily habits. Mm-hmm. But when you're doing this, you're just visualizing and focused on these feelings, what it would be like, but you didn't have an activity or a job or a vocation attached to that. It was just you wanted to feel like that, whatever it was you were doing.
Exactly, because I didn't know exactly what job would be the best job that would match that. I didn't know what would be the best outcome or what would get me to those feelings. All I knew is this is what I wanted to feel. And I think sometimes that's where we get in our own way, which is we think that we know what the answer is to get us to that promised land. But we don't. We think it may be a particular job or a particular path, but it may be something that we haven't considered before. So I feel like it was helpful for me to realize that this is ideally how I want to feel. I have no idea how to get there, but I want to focus on the feeling place of that because I know from my work that feelings are really powerful and they can really, cause a lot of momentum in your life. So I just wanted to focus on those feelings without trying to make anything happen in particular, other than just tapping into those feelings. So as I did that, I noticed that things started to shift in my day to day. And then a funny thing happened along the way. Probably about almost a year into the job, finally, when I had gotten to the place like, okay, I'm doing this job, it's fine, whatever, I'll be here however long I'm here. The company sold. Oh. The company sold, and my position was eliminated. So really, when I got to that place where I wouldn't say content, but I was like accepting of where I was at and not trying to change it and not trying to run away from it. The company sold and my position was eliminated. And then I was able to leave and then, pursue work that was more fitting to what I was looking for. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
Got it. So what really, it is kind of a slap in the face, but it was also a good timing. I don't want to use the word sign, but it was good timing for you to kind of move on.
Oh yeah, it was perfect. It was like, oh, I can get off here. Okay, I'm off. Bye.
Later.
Yeah, see you guys later. Because at that point I didn't see any way out. So instead, I just felt, I felt like there are two paths to peace. One is you can accept the situation as it is, or two, you can work towards the solution or what you believe to be the solution or the direction of the solution. And I felt like along the way, I was accepting, this is where I am, but behind the scenes, I was working on tapping into the feeling place of what I wanted to feel and experience. And they've actually done tests in physics where they found like if you do repeated activities like that involve feelings and emotions, it actually literally creates this energetic field around whatever it is that you're focusing on, and it will grow in time. It will keep adding to itself as you keep practicing it. So I feel like.
Do you mean how they measure something?
They measure what they call a morphic field. I don't know exactly what that is. I'm not a physicist, but basically my takeaway from it was that if you keep practicing the energy of things, it's almost like being in a bad mood, right? If you're in a bad mood and you don't get out of that bad mood and then these bad things happen, it seems like it spirals, right?
Right.
bad things, just more bad things keep happening. It's because like you're locked in on that frequency, right? So
Right.
instead, when I was in this place where I wasn't in the frequency that I wanted to be in, I identified what I thought was my best guess of the frequency that I really wanted and just started focusing on that. And eventually things shifted.
Now, you said I'd asked you about some important values or lessons, and one thing you mentioned maybe is this. You said when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Is that kind of what we're talking about here?
Well, absolutely. That was
Okay.
actually a quote from Wayne Dyer, and who is this author, and he was a therapist, I believe. And he had this quote that when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So basically, the beginning of making the positive changes in your life begins with a shift in your perception. When you're willing to have your perception changed, then you literally can open up a whole new world for you, or at least you can open up a new path, or a direction for you to go in. But if you're
Mhm.
not willing to look at things differently, if you're not willing to do different things, then it's going to be literally impossible for things to change for you until you are. And I feel like sometimes things will get worse or snowball in our life, almost forcing us to change because
Mhm.
we're not willing to do it willingly. So I feel like sometimes we're forced to make those changes that we're not consciously willing to do.
Yeah, because so it's easy to say. It makes sense, okay, when you change the way you look at things. But if you're in a certain mindset, or if you want to call it a rut, if it's more of a negative type of thing, it's hard to think outside of that box. You're in
100%.
it. Like I can say, okay, right now I want to think of all this happy stuff, and it's so easy for people to get sucked into the current situation. Is there, how do you do that? How do you, if you're inside the box, how can you get yourself outside of the box?
Well, just the example that I just used, right? When I was at my most miserable, 2 months into this job, I physically went to a different location. I went away for a couple days. And that physical act of leaving the environment was very powerful because when you're in it, it's almost like you can't see past it, right? So I went
Right.
away for a couple days, and not even with the intention that I'm going to see more positive, just to get away and clear
Even
my head.
physically, so just even
Physically,
physically getting away from the
physically,
physical.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I've had that situation even in a work situation where sometimes I just need to walk outside of the office and go outside. In fact, it's a daily practice of mine too. To this day, like periodically throughout the day, I'll just walk outside and take some deep breaths and then go back in and continue working. Because
Okay.
sometimes we can just get locked in staring at the screen, computer screen, or whatever it is that we're working on. So
Okay.
I think it was really helpful to physically leave the environment. And then and then I think the second piece was to go to a place where I could have quiet, where I wasn't plugged into a device, where I wasn't looking at a computer. I just wanted to give myself some time. I didn't have to be there for days on end, but just a few hours, just to be with myself, in nature and say like, what's really bothering you here? And it was in that quiet, in that space where I realized, oh, what's really bothering me here was I felt like I wasn't being seen and appreciated for who I really am. I hadn't thought of it that way. And so that was a big realization. That was what was really bothering me. And then the second question was, what is it that I really want instead? If I could replace all of this, what do I really want instead? And that's where I identified those feelings that we just discussed, which is I wanted to feel creative again. I wanted to feel passionate again. I wanted to be able to, feel motivated. I wanted to feel, like appreciated and seen for who I am, and I actually wrote those qualities down. And then I did the
I
daily
like
practice that we just discussed.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's great. I'm actually going to try that because I've had those times in my life where I felt that the things I was doing wasn't making me any money, unfortunately.
Hmm.
But at one point when I was doing my music, and I would be writing a song, and it would just be coming through me, uh, not because of my any innate talent on my part, but things like that come together, that's kind of more in the creative side, but you kind of, or call it in the zone, call
Hmm.
it being one with the universe, call it God, whatever you want to call it. I've had those feelings, and
Mm-hmm.
that's something that would be great to have all the times.
I feel like when you're in nature, even if you're in nature and you take off your shoes and you connect with the earth and you just feel, you don't have to be, a nature lover to do that. But once you connect in that way, when you step out of your normal like work environment and just connect like that, it opens up something else. They've actually done studies where they call it earthing, but when people connect with the earth physically, like gardening or walking barefooted, it actually drains the stress from their bodies. It actually, helps to clear the stress and clear their mind too. And I've always felt like the most connected and the most stress-free when I'm in nature. So I try to connect with that as much as possible. And in this case, when I was at a very low point, it really helped me to step out of the regular work environment and to go into nature and to clear my head. And once my head started clearing, it gave me clarity on what path to go in. But you also brought up another good point too, which was in regards to money. A lot of times people going like, well, I'm interested in all of this, but how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to make the money? And that's a very common scenario for people. And I would say like, well, sit with that for a little bit. Say like, why do you want the money? A lot of times people don't even know why. I mean, they're like, well, I need to, I have expenses. No, but if you had a lot of money, why do you really want that? What is it really going to get you? What are the feelings that, you're like, well, if I had a lot of money, and what's a lot of money to you? What's a lot of money to one person is a lot of, it's different for another person. Mm-hmm. So once you identify what a lot of money is to you, just do this as a little exercise and say like, okay, if I had $1 million or $5 million, what would I do with that? What is it that I would do with that? Or if I had $10 million, what would I do with that? Well, besides after you pay off the bills and you buy the car you want and you live in the house, what are you going to do with it? What if the money kept coming? What are you going to do with it? When you start answering those questions, that's telling you what it is that you really want. The money is just a means to get there. And then not only that, when you get that, how would you feel when you got there? And whatever feelings you identify when you do that exercise, that's what it is that you really want. It's not the money. That's just that's just giving you the means to tap into it. But what you really want is, for a lot of people, it's a feeling of freedom. It's a feeling of creativity. It's a feeling of, being able to be who they really are, and to have the freedom to express that and to be that, And so I feel like it's important to ask yourself, why do you want that money? And say I wrote a check out and gave you $10 million right now, or $20 million right now. What would you do with it? I think it was Ted Turner years ago when he gave $1 billion to the United Nations. They asked him like, why did you give $1 billion to the United Nations? He says, well, after you make about $100 million or so, you have more money than you could ever use. So I figured, why don't I just put it to good use? And you brought up billionaires earlier, and there's this group like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and all these other business people, Larry Ellison, the Oracle guy. They've actually formed this group where they've committed to give away 99% of their wealth instead of just passing it on to their families or whatever. I mean, they still get to keep 1%, and 1% of billions is still a lot of money. But they've
pretty crazy. I mean, think if it's easy to hear that and say, okay, that's pretty cool. But just think, if you're in that position and you had $1 billion or billions of dollars, just think about writing a check and giving it all away. That would be hard to do because you have a little bit of maybe it's a greed factor or whatever it is. But I think in reality, it would be very hard for most people to do.
I agree. But I also feel like it's important to identify, like we just discussed, why you want the money. What is it that it's going to bring you? How do you think it's going to feel? Because if you don't shift into those feelings, into that mindset of what it's actually going to bring you, you're going to sabotage the money that you do get. I mean, they've have countless stories of lottery winners who win all this money and 5 years later are broke. It's because their mindset never shifted. They never shifted into what it is that was really calling them. They thought it was the money, but it wasn't the money. And clearly they blew it all. And now they don't have any money and they're back in the same boat again. So I feel like it's a valuable exercise to identify why it is you want these things. Or it doesn't even have to be money. It could be something that you really, really want. It could be a relationship. It could be a house. It could be a car. It doesn't have to be material. It could just, be a certain type of job. But ask yourself, why do you want that? And if you had that today and you were living that life, how would you feel? How would you feel? Yeah. How would that make you feel?
It's funny you say that. Again, I know I've said it's funny you say that several times, but because I've recently, in recent years, kind of done that same thing. And I always, up to this point, was thinking, well, I'm going to make $20 million or whatever. And then when I get that, I'm going to do this and get that. But in the last several years, I came to the realization that what I really just want is my freedom. And I want to be in my path that has my own purpose and passion, whatever that is. And just enough money that I have the freedom to do the things that I want to do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And really it boiled down to that. So it's not even, would I want to work and be an accountant and make $100 million? No, because I don't want to be an accountant.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right? Nothing against being an accountant. I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah. Example.
So I'm not willing to do just anything for a large sum of money because, I've been there where you're doing stuff you don't enjoy and it's just not worth it to me at this point, at this stage of my life.
Exactly.
So I'm still, I'm on, that's part of the reason I'm doing the podcast is, getting on my own path and then talking to people like you who have gotten over the hump in that respect. And, hopefully other men can learn something from this and use it on their own path.
Here, I want to share an example with you. I remember a couple of years ago, somebody asked me, is there any breathing techniques I can use to reduce stress? And I said, yeah, there's this pranayama breathing technique that I can teach you. So I taught them this technique. And then afterwards, when I got home, I was thinking, you know what? I don't think they're going to remember exactly the way I explained it. I should record a quick little video showing them what to do exactly, right? So I recorded that video and I sent the video to them. And then after I had the video shot, I said, you know what? I should just upload this to YouTube, right? And, how to reduce stress in 2 minutes or something, I called it. Because that's what it is. It's a simple 2-minute breathing technique. Mm-hmm. And didn't think anything of it, right? And then pretty soon people started finding it and then, sharing these little testimonials. And flash forward years later, I think that little video that I shot just kind of on a whim, it's not even shot very well. It has I think 85,000 views and all these testimonials of all these people. And my point being is I wasn't trying to make a splash on YouTube. I was just trying to help somebody. And I just thought it was a good way to do that. So I realized, I wasn't trying to be a big deal on YouTube. I was just trying to focus on making a difference. And things fell into place. And, another thing I do is I've always liked quotes because quotes are just collections of aha moments, and I feel like they can be really powerful and they've always been powerful for me. So I remember I started posting quotes that I found were interesting. I would post them on Twitter, and I would just post the ones that I found interesting. And I tried to stay away from ones that were cliche, just things that were meaningful to me. Right. And then flash forward, years later of just posting all these little quotes. And I usually do it 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. And every now and then I'll just post something else that I find interesting, but I never try to get followers or anything like that. I just post quotes that I find interesting. Well, now, I have over 10,000 followers, following my quote, and they've retweeted them. I think one time it was retweeted so many times that it reached 250,000 people, if you follow the trail. And it just reminded me that I was never trying to be a big deal on Twitter either. I was just trying to share things that I found interesting. And now people give me so much feedback on these. They love the quotes that I share that it actually inspires me even more. Right. So it kind of built its own momentum, but I was never doing it with a business model in mind. I was just doing it because
Right.
it felt good to me. So in the same way that you're doing the podcast because it's just a good thing to you and you enjoy it, you're not trying to make it into something. If you become something, well, then that's what's going to happen. But it's like you're doing it because you're passionate about it. You love it. It feels good to you. I say,
Right.
keep doing that. Keep doing that,
Yeah. So basically to summarize that, once you find a direction and a passion, just go for it for
Mm-hmm.
its own purpose, as opposed to trying to concoct it.
Yeah,
too much.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, like you just said, like, well, I used to say, like, if I had $20 million, I would have the freedom to do what I want and the passion to do the things that I really enjoy. And I said, well, like, we'll focus on that freedom and that passion now,
No.
from where
Yeah.
you're at. Create that mindset. And in that mindset, with practice, eventually things will start to flow in that direction. And it sounds like way out there, but really if you just, and I'm a living example of this, if you just keep practicing it, eventually, you're going to identify what it is that you really want behind the things that you want. And number two, you're going to start moving, even if it's slow, you're going to slowly just start moving in that direction. And that's, the time's going to pass anyways. So you might as well spend it focusing on doing the things that it is that you really want to do. I just remember years ago, they had asked Kobe Bryant when he had won his last finals championship in the NBA. And they said, like, what was it like for you? Like, how exciting was it to win another NBA finals championship? And he said, yeah, this is really great. I feel, so grateful to have this experience. But really the greatest joy for me was the process along the way, getting there, trying to figure out how are we going to get there and overcoming all these hurdles. And it's when you don't have the accolades and you don't have the success that you're looking for, it seems like it's BS when someone's telling you just focus on the process,
Right.
day by day. But really, it's, your life really consists of one process after the next, right? So find the joy in the moment, in the process, find a process that feels good to you. Even if doesn't appear to be anything happening on the outside, just stick with that and build momentum in that direction, build that new path. I remember when I discovered this gift of the energy healing work years ago, I remember I was so excited by the people that were being impacted by it. I just wanted to do it all the time. I was just like, I only want to do this. I want to have my own center. I want to, just do all. I was so passionate to do that. And is that the path that I took? No. I mean, actually what happened is I continued to work in business, continued to do it on the side. And it became my side hustle before there was even the term side hustle,
Right.
but I did it because it felt good to me. It's because I enjoyed it. And over time, it became something. Last year, I saw hundreds of different client sessions. So it's become its own thing. But it started out just because I was passionate about it.
And I've also come to the realization that there really is you don't really arrive at a destination per se. There might be little stops along the way, but it just always keeps rolling, right?
Exactly.
Like when I was younger, looking at the future, when this happens, but the future keeps going out ahead of you as you're moving. It never quite gets there. You're always just where you are.
You're
now.
always in the present.
Oh, yeah. So that kind of lends itself to what you're saying about find a process that you're enjoying, because that's really what you're in, and maybe never arrive there. So now that I'm going to ask this next question, which sounds kind of dumb based on what we just said, I always ask, what are your future goals and all that stuff? Maybe it's not dumb to ask about future goals, but we just said that you never get to the future destination.
Right.
But let's say what things are you trying to challenge yourself now with or looking to do?
Well, it's interesting. One thing that I made the decision that I wanted to start doing more of, so I'm glad to be here on your podcast, but I wanted to start doing more podcasting, just getting out there. It started to seem like it's a new medium. And once again, I just started deciding that, in myself, like I would love to do more podcasting, and then I have the opportunity to do it with you. So I would like to do more of that. I feel like that would be great. I also feel like, I have gotten some really good responses with some of the videos that I have done. But I've never done them really professionally. Not that they have to be super polished, but just I want to maybe do them right. So that kind of intrigues me as well too. And I started a blog in 2006 where I just write articles sharing different tools that I found and different insights that I had, and got hundreds of subscribers and all of that. And I've been going through lately like the blog archives, because I had probably about 150 articles, and I just wanted to kind of go through it and just kind of clean up the evergreen content, add photos and things like that, and maybe clean them up a little bit and get rid of the outdated stuff. And so just kind of, so I've been focusing on that as well too, and then once I get that all cleaned up a little bit more, maybe sharing it with other mediums like Medium, which is a blog site. Yep. And I know LinkedIn has a blogging platform as well too. So I just maybe get some of these evergreen content out to other channels as well, so once again, with no particular goal in mind, but just put it out there to see what happens.
Right. Okay. That sounds great. And, it's your same message. It's just amazing these days that as an individual, you can put something out there and millions of people can see it. I mean, what other time in history has that ever been possible? It never has been. I mean, even if you were the king, you had to have people ride out with scrolls and go in the square, right? And not everybody hears that. So it's an amazing time in history to reach a lot of people.
I agree. I remember years ago seeing a documentary on the History Channel where they're talking about the greatest inventions of all time. And it ended up being the greatest invention of all time was the printing press. And I feel like, in a sense, the internet and the way we connect with people and all the digital content that's out there, it's a giant printing press, right? I mean, we're connecting with so many people. Everybody's smartphone that they have in their hand is literally this little computer, this powerful computer, which would have been the most powerful computer available like, 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's this powerful device that we all have access to. So literally we can connect in this tremendous way that we never had the opportunity before. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. I appreciate it. Just to summarize a couple of things that people can do, they can look up the Oak app, which thanks for sharing that. I had not heard of that. That's where they have like meditation and breathing. And remember, there are warriors that do this. So don't think it's, too woo-woo in, LA or whatever. Okay. So just keep that in mind. That's worth a try. And then something I'm going to try that you had mentioned is visualizing and connecting emotion to the things that I want to feel. So, freedom, everything you said actually is kind of what I want too. The freedom, the passion, the creativity, because I've had tastes of those in various guises in my life. So I'm going to try that and just focus on that and just feel that. So it's worth a try. I mean,
one thing I would also add too is once you identify those qualities in yourself, you can, not only can you practice feeling them on a daily basis, because that can, like I said, activate those feelings and that in your own awareness, but you can also use those as a guide, right? Use those qualities as a guide to make decisions. Like, okay, if an opportunity comes up, a person, place, situation, or circumstance, if I say yes to that, does it move me in this direction? Yes or no?
Oh yeah, that's a great test.
It's like a yes or no, right? If it moves you in that direction, then say yes. If it doesn't, it doesn't even matter why it doesn't. It's not a yes but or a no but. It's just like either it does or it doesn't. So if it doesn't, my encouragement and my support is to say no to it because it's not moving in the direction that you ultimately want to go in. So
it sounds so obvious when you explain it that way, but it's hard. People like, things come to you. Oh, then you start thinking about the money and should I do this? But this is a very simple. I would say obvious way that, I didn't really think of. So it wasn't that obvious. It's a simple way, simple test, that aligns yourself up. And you could obviously see if it doesn't align with this, you're not going to be happy, most likely.
Yeah. And I would also add too, if people are having trouble releasing some of these old feelings that are embedded in them, and they feel like they're open-minded and they like to try energy healing work, my work might be able to help them or someone else that does this type of work as well too. So they can always check out my website as well too. And
I wanted to get to I want to ask you about Manceptional, then I'll ask you about how people can contact you.
Sure, absolutely.
So usually at the end, I try to, I ask what your idea of a manceptional man would be.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's a made up word, but it's, to me, it's being on your path, in your zone, and growing and learning skills. What would your thought be on that? Someone who's manceptional.
I feel like my concept of manceptional would be is a man who discovers who they really are, not who everyone thinks that they should be, not what everyone wants them to be, but who they really are. And then they have the courage, because sometimes it takes courage to be who you really are, but have the courage to step out and be that with no excuses, with, don't have to apologize for anything, because you came to express who you really are. So I feel like somebody who's manceptional, a man who is manceptional, is somebody who's comfortable doing that. Because often as men, we often feel like we have to, we have to do things that our family's expecting of us, or our wife is expecting of our girlfriend, or our children, or our family, or parents, or whatever, or society even. It's only been a little bit more acceptable in more recent years for men to admit that they have these feelings, because it felt too feminine. And to know that we're complex beings, we do have feelings and we do have emotions, and it doesn't make you less of a man. It actually makes you more of a man to accept that and embrace that, and then use that to step into who you really are as a man. Not society's idea of a man, but your idea, and so I feel like go out and rock it without any apologies.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. I like that a lot. I might grab some of that from
Absolutely. Feel free.
I love it. So how can people best follow you or maybe get in touch with you? You mentioned website, YouTube. What's the best?
You can always check out my website, RaymondSalas.com. That's RaymondSalas.com. And then from there, you can also I have connections to my Twitter site and my Facebook site. So if you want to check out the quotes that I talked about, or if you're on Twitter, you can check my handle on Twitter is at ZenChill, ZenChill, at ZenChill. And you can just check out the quotes that I share with people, and have been doing that for a number of years. And people still, I look at it as just kind of like this daily dose of wisdom and inspiration that I share with people. And you can also check out my blog site. And like I said, I've had a blog since 2006, and I have a number of articles there that I'm in the process of also cleaning up and adding more to and enhancing. And that's zenchillblog.com. So you can check out any of those sites and connect with me there.
Cool. Now, what if somebody, I wanted to ask you this actually. Let's say somebody wants to connect with you and they don't live here in, Southern California, LA area. You had mentioned something where you do a remote session. So how can you feel someone's vibe over the phone? If that's or is it like a video conference? I mean, how does that work?
No, the way it works is it is via telephone. And then afterwards, after we have a session, we have our one-on-one, just as if we would in person. We hang up, and then I tune into that person remotely. And I know it sounds kind of strange, but the way
that's what I'm asking. How do you do that?
Okay, but let me explain. It was actually something that I discovered that was really strange to me as well too. And what happened is, this actually happened years ago when I started doing my energy healing work in person for people. And I read about this healer in Hawaii who was able to work on people remotely. And I was so fascinated with the story. I thought to myself, I wonder if I could do that, And then that same day, I ended up going, it was like Labor Day. I ended up going to like a Labor Day pool party. And I remember those ideas were still roaming around in my head, right? And I got to the party, and my friend who was hosting the party, she said her back was bothering her, and would I be willing to go in and help do some energy clearing work, because it seemed to really help her mom last time I worked on her. I said, sure, I'd be happy to do that. So I went into the room, we went by ourselves, and I worked on her and did a clearing. And I guess when I came out afterwards, her mom was like, oh my gosh, this is the best I felt since, a month. I cannot believe it. This is great. Thank you so much, And then all these people started asking me about my work, right? Like, oh, this is really interesting, And then I said, what? I actually don't know where this came from, but I said, well, if you want, you can give me your name and I can just try to clear you remotely, from a distance, after I leave the party today. So people gave me,
and you hadn't done this before.
I had never done that, right?
Okay.
And I think I just read that story, and I wasn't making any promises. I was just like, I could try to clear you remotely. Okay. And I never told them like I've never done this before. And so they were giving me names. They gave me like maybe half a dozen people gave me names and stuff. And I didn't think anything of it. And I left the party eventually. And then one by one, once I had the list, and I got home, I started focusing on each person. Like, okay, not even trying to picture them in my head, just trying to.
I was going to say, did you have to remember what they looked like?
No, I didn't remember. I just had their name, right? But somehow I think our name carries our energy, or carries some of our energy with it, because it's our name. It's like, who we are, in this lifetime. So somehow, some way, that helped me to tune into their frequency. It was almost like you tune into a radio. You find the right frequency, and then all of a sudden the station comes clear. That's what it felt like to me. So I would just focus on their name, and then somehow I felt like this connection, like I would feel it connect. And then I would just focus on clearing them. And then I would move on to the next person. And honestly, I'll be honest with you, I didn't think anything of it after I did it. It didn't take long, it just took a few minutes. Mm-hmm. So my friend a couple of days later contacts me and says, she says, oh my gosh, people kept talking about you, at the party. But what was really weird is a couple of people that gave you their name, they started feeling things in their body after you left the party. So I was one of the first people to leave. Like for one thing, for example, one guy was talking to me like his shoulder was really bothering him. And okay. he had been on, he'd been working for, I think, the fire department or something, and he had been injured. And so he was one person that gave me his name. And then I guess afterwards, he said he started feeling his shoulder tingle, and he started feeling like energy in his shoulder. And I don't think he was associating with anything that giving me his name, right. But afterwards, and he said afterwards, over the next couple of days, he started to feel better. And then I guess another person had been in a motorcycle accident, and their lower back had been bothering them. And so he was a person that had given me his name. And his wife called me like a couple days later. She said, we gave you his name, and I don't know what you did, but he said he felt like his back shifted into place, and all of a sudden the pain was gone. And I was like, wow, so it was
wow. I'd be like, oh, wow, holy crap.
Yeah. So it was a wow for me, and it was a wow for them. And I said, oh, I was on this. So then what I did is I did an experiment. I made a list of all these family and friends that I knew that had different things going on with them. And I didn't tell anybody that I was going to do this. Okay. And I just one by one started doing it in the same way that I just done for the people at the party. And I just started focusing. And within a week or two of doing this, all these things started happening in people's lives, like getting jobs, doing this, feeling better, not feeling depressed. Like all these things started happening. So I was like, oh, I have something here. So once I felt really congruent with it, because I felt like there's a lot of snake oil and empty promises on the internet. Right. Once I felt like, congruent with what I was doing, what I was offering, I wasn't making any promises, but I was just sharing like, hey, if this can help you, you can check this out. I made it available on the internet. And then that's when people started finding me from all over the world, and I didn't even know how to do SEO or anything like that. So people just found me either from my blog, because they started finding me through my blog site, or they just started finding me on their own, and it's interesting. I even had celebrities follow me just on my little rinky-dink energy healing website that was not fancy at all, very mom and pop, but they were intrigued by the content, and they contacted me, and I've been working with some of them ever since. And I feel like that's how I discovered I could do it remotely. So to answer your question is, now more than half of my business, most of my energy healing work is all remote. It's people just contact me. So basically what it is initially it's just a conversation that we have on the phone that can last an hour or so, but it can be less, and sometimes it could be a little bit more. And then when I'm done, I tune in the same way I used to tune into the people with their name. And then once I tune in their frequency, I go in and clear them just like I would if they were in person from head to toe. And then once I'm all done and it feels clear, I just send them a quick email and say, let you know, hey, it's all clear. And if there's any highlights to share from our session together or any tools that we discussed, I share those as well too. And then that's it. That's what a session looks like.
Wow, that's amazing. So there you go. For listeners who may be located wherever, these podcasts go out everywhere. You can still get in touch with Raymond, and if you're interested, and discuss that with him. So that's pretty cool. And that fits the internet age too, where it's broadcast globally, right?
Absolutely. And that's what I love about the internet, because you have the opportunity to connect with people that you would never connect with otherwise. But also because I want to be a person of integrity, and I feel like there's so many people out there nowadays, promising so many things, empty promises, just trying to take people's money, that, I just want to focus on excellence. I just want to focus on adding value, and that's my only interest, So whether I'm serving, 100 people or 1,000 people, that's always going to be my focus. It's always going to be the same. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Raymond, this was really cool. I again, going into this, I didn't know too much about it. Of course, living here in LA, you hear about, various things.
Yes.
I think it was a lot more practical, I think, than maybe I was expecting, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say to anyone who's interested, give it a try. I'm going to try some of the things that we learned today, and I appreciate you coming on.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me, Ken. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's stay in touch.
Okay, that sounds great.
Fantastic. Okay. Have a good one.
All right. Be well.
Okay.